Hey everybody, this is Jason Snart. I teach English here at COD, and I am the workshop leader, facilitator, whatever term you want to use, for our hybrid learning workshop, which technically starts on Tuesday. But as you might have seen, I've sent out an early email just kind of welcoming you to the workshop. And I've opened the course up so you can see kind of what the layout looks like in Blackboard. So what you may have noticed in the email that I sent out, and a lot of what we'll talk about when we first meet on Tuesday, is that a lot of what I do for the class is, I guess, sort of beneficial for you as the student side of it, but really I'm doing this more to show you as like a thing that you could do in your own classes, be they online, hybrid, or really fully face-to-face. So this is the kind of thing that I would do in a class, but clearly I wouldn't say this kind of weird stuff to students. So this is much more, I guess, informal, but also sort of like a meta commentary, if that makes any sense. So it's sort of like an announcement about doing announcements if you wanted to. So I'm going to leave this here, and I'm also using a tool called Camtasia, which is something, again, that we can talk about. It'll figure into our discussion sort of as like technology, but technology to do a certain thing. So we don't just want to get mired in like, oh, here's a tool for this, and here's a tool that does that, and all this kind of things. We want to think about what problem are we trying to solve, what thing are we trying to do better, what goal are we trying to accomplish, and then what sort of technology can we fill in here. So the thing I like about Camtasia is sort of a fully developed video editing suite here, but I'm using it for our purposes because you can see it shows our screen, or my screen, but our course, but also my little window here so that I can be present as well. So when I do these for classes, I tend to do some of the earlier ones where it's just me talking to the camera and not the screen as well, as a way of, you know, being an actual person for students, especially in the totally online environment, but even in the blended environment as well, or hybrid, sort of interchangeable terms. But it's also nice, especially once you get past that, like, hey, I'm an actual person phase, to be able to show your screen. And I often answer emails from students about, I can't find this, or where do you do this, or where's the blah, blah, blah. Instead of trying to type in text a description of what you would see on the screen and walk them through, which is really tedious and sometimes actually quite hard to do, it's great to just capture your screen and do a couple clicks and then send them the link to that 30-second video. It's a lot easier on our end, I think, and kind of more helpful for them as well. So these little video capture things are great for doing announcement-y type things like this, but also for interacting with students in ways that we would normally just default to email. And a lot of people, you know, I suggest that and they think, oh my God, I'm gonna have to do a video, that'll take hours and forever. Unless you're producing videos and doing a lot of manipulation of what's going on, basic recording and sending somebody a link is actually really quick. In many cases, like I said, it's much quicker than trying to type a bunch of description and direction about where to do things, which you probably already got in your course, let's be honest. So a little 30-second video takes about 35 seconds to click, and then the 30-second capture, and then send. And I'll show you how to do that if you're interested when we meet on Tuesday or in a future class session. So what I would say to students, though, back to our student thing is welcome, and maybe a little bit about how our course works. So you'll see that our course menu here has a few items. You'll notice that there are some that are hidden, so I like to have them on my side of it, or you might on the instructor side, but you don't have to show everything to all students. And of course, as you probably know, you can move things around. So a lot of what is like sort of lower on the list now will migrate up as we get to it in class. So I'd like to think of the course menu as a fairly fluid kind of a thing. Obviously, I don't go crazy with it so that students are lost, but it's not like you have to have everything there on day one or that it's set in stone, especially if you're doing something that lasts for a unit or a module within your course. Maybe you want some links up at the top so that students, to get to things, they can show projects, or there's the whatever there might be. But then once you're done with that, you don't want to totally send it away, but maybe it just kind of moves down to an area of work that you've already done. Anyway, the menu can be fluid. So I would want to walk students then through how our course works. So we have a little section of that within the course, but I like to do a sort of live version of it. So you can read through it and blah, 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 and all that kind of stuff. For our purposes, and most of my courses are built this way, we have a series of units that we'll be working through. Again, a lot of it is really just food for discussion, which is what our face-to-face meetings will be, and then we'll kind of look at, I mean, in many ways, it again is that like meta experience of you're a student and we do all these things and we have like a grading scheme. But really the point is not that I'm grading your work exactly, but to show you how it might look if you were to implement the same kind of scheme or things that you might want to have going on in your hybrid classes. Or maybe you're already teaching hybrid or online and you do, but you do it differently. That's perfect stuff to talk about as well. So one of the things that I'll talk about on Tuesday as we do introductions and get the ball rolling is that I worry that the course might appear a little bit overwhelming, like, oh, grading, who does this guy think he is? Or readings, or all of this stuff going on. A lot of it is really just food for discussion or example so that you can see what it might look like in a class where you would be doing full-blown assessment stuff and a much more stringent or rubric-based kind of grading guideline and that sort of thing. Okay, so we have our units laid out here, and then of course our due dates. So ours is fairly simplistic, and I'll talk a little bit more about this. Clearly for a fully online class or for other kinds of situations, you'd want to be maybe a little more nuanced about how your due date systems work. But ours is pretty straightforward. That's why it's, just readable here. It doesn't require a lot of a description or explanation, but it's something that, again, we'll cover on Tuesday. So the nice thing about the hybrid, I think, and I'll say this like a million times over, it's really corny, but it allows you the opportunity to do a lot of what works really great face-to-face, like immediate kind of real-time discussion that is involves a lot of people, but is a lot more manageable because we have nonverbal communication things going on. So I'm a big fan of virtual communication. I think you can really get a lot done that way. But once you get 3, 4, 10 people involved, let alone a class of 25 or 35, the most participants become very passive. So while I don't agree that virtual communication is less effective maybe on a one-to-one basis, and thus shouldn't be done online or isn't very useful online or is better face-to-face, I do agree that for larger groups, even like the 10 people or so that we'll have, the nonverbal communication, the gestural thing, the way that you can just sort of look around a room, we haven't quite figured that out in the online environment yet. So the face-to-face is great for that kind of thing. Conversation where lots of people can have ideas that are really immediate and jump in, and maybe 2 people talk at the same time. Whereas online, that becomes a bit of a challenge. Face-to-face, not so much. But we're not locked into just the face-to-face component. We can do lots of other stuff that is fairly deep online as well, that involves your time, right? And again, I'm conscious of people's time for our purposes, but in terms of teaching a hybrid class, if you're doing all of your face-to-face meetings and then trying to do some online stuff as well, if you make that really engaging and robust online, you're doing a disservice to students because they're now doing sort of like a class and a half, but for you too, that's a class and a half, and that's not really fair to the students, but to you. So the hybrid, again, allows for us to do not just sort of an ancillary or secondary online stuff, just backup in case the face-to-face needs help, but online stuff that's engaging and spans multiple weeks. So we develop a project. It's as opposed to just these really like discrete kind of little things, but that has the depth, the weight, the engagement factor that our face-to-face time might as well. Without us having to take on like a class and a half, which the students don't like, and which is a burnout for you as well, for me too. In fact, one of the ways I got into hybrid is really doing that class and a half and finally being like, why am I doing this? So I sort of backed into it. Again, lots of food for discussion for Tuesday. So this is an early welcome. The class is open. You can explore, get the syllabus, just look around and get comfortable. We'll talk about the importance of getting students oriented as early as possible. but you certainly don't have to start any of the work for our class. If you have questions or find typos or mistakes, you can email me. But otherwise, I've done the hybrid workshop maybe 3 or 4, 5 different times now. And it's always a different experience, but it's always great. So many different perspectives and what people have plans for, aspirations for. It's a great sort of discussion group that I always look forward to. So I look forward to meeting all of you on Tuesday. And again, if you have questions or concerns or anything going on, just be in touch with me. All right, I'll talk with everybody soon.